All right. Hello, everybody. We are back with another Urbi et Orbi Communications podcast. And today we are going to be talking with two very important voices. And we're going to be discussing the current situation in Beirut, in Lebanon, in the Middle East in general. I'm Christopher Hart-Moynihan, and I have been for several years directing the Friends of Lebanon project. We have not been as active with this Friends of Lebanon project in the last several months, but now, given the incredible and incredibly shocking events that we've been seeing in Beirut and in southern Lebanon and in the Middle East in general, with the war, we are going to be trying to rebuild or recharge our efforts a little bit more. And I wanted to welcome George Asaf. And George, can you talk a little bit about yourself? Where are you right now?
Okay, hello. I'm George Asaf. I'm now in Beirut, near to Beirut in Babda. It's a residential area where I live and I work. I have a background in sports and I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a co-founder of a club, Performance First, and a school, vocational school, and also our NGO, Lebanese Young Talents, since 2007. And I feel that I'm in the field of sports and education.
Mhm.
I have expertise in training. I'm an Olympic coach. I have two athletes who has been to the Olympics and the Paralympics. And I'm a teacher at university. I teach at university since I have a PhD in sports physiology.
So, yes, and we have known each other basically since 2020 when the um, August 4th explosion happened in Beirut. And I
Exactly.
also have, yeah, all of myself and my father and a lot of people have also known your brother for a long time, Tony Asaf. He is kind of a legend in Italy, in Rome, and in Lebanon, and in the U.S. So, yes, um, so basically, today we want to talk about what's happening in Beirut on the ground. We also have Romy. I hope I'm saying it right. Haber, Romy
Yes,
Haber. Yes, and Romy is at an undisclosed location. Can you say where
Rome.
you? Yes,
Roma.
she's in Rome, and she is a Lebanese journalist. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Romy, please?
Sure. So, hi all. I'm a journalist from Lebanon. I have a master's degree in security studies. I've done a lot of research on the security of minorities in the Middle East, especially Christian minorities. And I'm currently in Rome covering Vatican news.
Okay,
I just came
so
back from Lebanon last week.
you just came back from Lebanon last week, so that was actually one of my first questions I wanted to. Maybe Romy, I'll just ask you: have you seen any news about the airport in Beirut? Is or George as well? Either of you can tell me. But I've been reading that there's some issues with getting people out of Beirut if they want to leave. Like there's many U.S. citizens, British, European citizens that are not able to leave Beirut right now. Is that have you been hearing that at all and hearing what's
From
going on with that?
from what I know, the only airline operating is a Middle East Airlines, and that's how I was able to travel to Rome. But I know that embassies and different countries are helping their citizens leave the country. So I don't think
Ex-
anyone is actually blocked in Lebanon at the moment.
Exactly. The Beirut airport, it's still operating, but it's limited for to few airlines, only Middle East, I guess,
Mm.
they're operating. But due to the ongoing conflict, there have been some challenges in securing tickets. That's why It's not available anymore. If you want to buy a ticket to leave Lebanon now, you will need like 1 month to find at least one ticket to go to Cyprus, to Turkey, to Greece, to Rome, or to Paris. So
Yes.
they are running out of fully booked. They are fully booked for a high demand. And now they're trying to leave by boats to Cyprus, many Lebanese. That's why all governments around, like USA government, Australia, Canada, they're sending their military. Today we knew that the Spanish embassy sent two flights using two military airplanes to take hundreds of their citizens. So that's the problem, the main problem now, the main issue.
Yeah. So I think that what I was reading was, yes, the airport is still operational, but there's at any time, like, this whole situation is kind of unfolding very rapidly. So at any time there could be some type of bombing or some type of situation that would close the airport. So they're recommending that anybody who wants to leave Lebanon should do that as soon as they can. And there were some tickets that were being sold for, $1,000 or more than that. So people are very worried. And
Even more, I guess, because normally the flights to Paris, like supposedly it used to be like 800. Now I think it's double.
yeah,
And there's no places.
2,000.
There's no places at all. And they're afraid, if for some reason Israel will think that the airport is being used to make some transportation from Iran or from other countries, they said they weren't gonna hit the airport. That's why they're afraid it will be closed.
The
And
problem is that we have only one operating airport. So we don't have
yeah,
any other way of escaping other than the airport, or maybe boats, as George said, to Cyprus or other locations.
and so with either of you, people that you know personally, family members or friends, are any of your family members or friends that are still in Lebanon right now, are they trying to leave right now, or are they more or less just ready to kind of wait it out?
Concerning my family, no. So already, they have two brothers outside Lebanon. My sister, she's blocked in Rome. She's been in France from last 2 weeks, and she's with Tony now. She will come back on Sunday, I guess. But technically, most of the Lebanese that they don't have passports or visa to leave. It's really
Yeah.
difficult to have some passport to Europe, even to Cyprus. You need a visa. So the only country that now that we can go without a visa is Turkey and maybe Jordan, if we have some flights there. So now we are blocked between the sea. That's few operation, and by leaving by sea, and it's really expensive. I asked once it's like 2,000 to 3,000 to be in Cyprus, and you have from the land Syria, and it's really dangerous also. So because there's attacking there also. So the only way is to buy some tickets, and if there's these tickets, it's really expensive.
Yeah. And Romy, do you have some people that you also are in contact with in Beirut that are uh, trying to leave, but they can't? They have to stay put there in Beirut.
My family is in Lebanon, but they don't really have an intention of leaving. Also, as George said, they need a visa, they need to a work contract abroad. It's not like easy to just leave. So they just adapt based on the situation. For example, my mom is a teacher. She's now teaching online. My brother is a university student. He's now, they moved to online classes. So they just adapt and don't really have an intention of leaving.
Yeah.
Most of my friends who left were students studying abroad or people who already had jobs before abroad.
Right. Well, so I wanted to do two things. First, before we go more into the political situation and this, conflict, I wanted to talk a little bit about how we began the Friends of Lebanon project. So this is a project that we began in August 2020. we saw this horrible explosion in the port of Beirut in August 2020 during COVID. So that was a time when it seemed like things couldn't actually get any worse for Lebanon, or yeah, particularly Lebanon. The Middle East, I guess at that time was, you know, more stable than it is now, of course. But at that time there was COVID, there was the financial crisis in Lebanon, and then finally there was this horrible explosion in Beirut port with this ship, and it was one of the most uh, one of the largest non-nuclear explosions in history, maybe second or third largest non-nuclear explosion, and thousands of people lost their lives, were left homeless, were injured. And so we began this Friends of Lebanon project and raised several tens of thousands of dollars within 2 or 3 months, and we sent it directly to um, people like George and one or two other people with his organization. And that was how our Friends of Lebanon began. We began with short-term help. We called it short-term help and long-term hope. And short-term help was this money that we raised through donations and sent for basically people that lost their homes, that needed food, that needed hospital payments, basically anything. It was a kind of day-to-day situation where people were saying, I need $5, I need $20. And they were in the hospital. They said they had no money for food. And so, we were sending our funds to George's organization, which is the Young Talents, Lebanese Young Talents. And you were distributing it, and that made a huge difference in a lot of people's lives at that time, as we know, and as I've written about a little bit over the last few years. And then we kind of transitioned to this idea of long-term hope, and the idea was, well, yeah, we do want to help people that have been affected by this explosion. We want to help people that are suffering in this community. It's it's a humanitarian idea that we have to help people in need. It's also this idea that it's a great it's a community that we care about because they're unique in the Middle East. It's a kind of Christian. Well, it's a multi-religious country. So it is Christian, it is Muslim, it has several other faiths like Druze and other smaller faiths, and everybody basically the idea is that everyone lives kind of together and respects the beliefs of the other groups. In practice, it's not always so simple like that, but we did want to support this presence of the Christian community in Lebanon, in the Maronite Christian community, as well as other Orthodox Christians, Syriac Christians, and there's obviously several different Christian groups. And so we decided to try to support educational funding for high school and university students in Beirut. And so there were several students that we supported, more than several, probably about 100 students or more, that we supported with funding so that they could complete their university studies. And these were students that were working 2 jobs. They were, caring for sick parents. They had parents that had passed away or been even rendered, unable to work by this explosion. And they were supporting younger siblings. There's all kinds of incredible stories of, very young people, 17, 18 years old, overcoming pretty incredible odds to, continue their studies and finish their studies. And so we were just trying to help them any way that we could. And then finally, we actually led a pilgrimage to Lebanon of about 10 friends of Lebanon. Some of our donors were so interested in what was happening with our project in Lebanon that they wanted to visit Beirut. And so we did take them to Beirut in 2022. We met George. We met some other of our Lebanese partners and friends like Aya and Ellie. And Ellie, I wanted to join us, but I think he's driving right now. But anyway, so since then, we've still been monitoring the situation and then really kind of watching with kind of trepidation, fear, and a lot of helplessness as this situation has started to escalate. And so I think the reason why I was saying all that is because if everybody, anyone who's watching this uh, tonight, we also have the opportunity to just send any funds that you want to send. If you would like to donate, you can send it to our Friends of Lebanon, and we send it directly through the same channel. We send it directly to George, and George is a hub of his community. So he's able to get the funds directly to the people that are most in need in Beirut. So that is our Friends of Lebanon project, and we are going to try to kind of restart the project a bit more than we have been. Obviously, the situation is constantly changing, but it is a very severe situation right now. So, and with that said, I also wanted to just give a quote from Saint Charbel, who's the famous saint of Lebanon. And Charbel was from northern Lebanon in the Bekaa Valley. No, not Bekaa. Correct me, not Bekaa Valley. What was the Holy Valley? Kadisha Valley.
Holy Valley.
Yeah, the Kadisha Valley. He was from the Kadisha Valley,
Adisha.
Lebanon. And he is a very famous saint for people, Christians, and actually some Muslims also find some are very interested in his life and come to visit his tomb. And his tomb in Lebanon has become a pilgrimage site because many unexplainable things, miracles, are happening there every day. So Saint Charbel has many quotes, but one that I always really like to come back to is, "Begin nothing on earth unless it has its end in heaven. Do not walk on a path that does not lead to heaven." So Saint Charbel is always someone who you can meditate on the words, and you find a lot more. Every time you think about it or meditate on it, you find something kind of new and useful and interesting. And he also said, "Light combats the darkness." So that's what we are trying to do in a small way with this podcast today. We're trying to just combat the darkness because there is a lot of darkness out there right now. So I guess I want to now talk about a little bit of background about what's happening. We have a lot of comments. We'll get to some comments towards the end, but I wanted to ask you, Romy, if you could just give a little background about the what has been happening in the last 2 to 3 weeks. When 2 to 3 weeks ago, we could still almost talk about avoiding a war, right? Israel, Lebanon, they were firing rockets at each other. Not Lebanon, I should say. Probably Hezbollah and Israel were firing rockets across the border, but you still could kind of imagine that there wouldn't be this full-fledged conflict that we see now. What has really occurred in the last 2 to 3 weeks that has changed that so drastically?
The war actually started a year ago in October 7 when Hezbollah decided to join the Lebanese front, the Hezbollah front, to the Palestinian one as a sign of unity. So they were firing rockets to Israel since then. However, we were still hoping that there would be still some balance and it wouldn't escalate. And suddenly, in the past few weeks, what we were afraid of happened. There was a huge escalation. And we had the pager story, if you remember, when Hezbollah's telecommunication network was completely hijacked and things started exploding. And every day we would wake up to the news of a new assassination of a Hezbollah commander or militant, till we reached the assassination of Nasrallah, which I think was the apogee of the whole story. It was very shocking, and some people wrongly thought that after the assassination of Nasrallah, the story would be over, that Hezbollah would be done. But this is just the beginning, because Hezbollah is not limited to weapons or a commander. It's an ideology that's gonna keep on growing more now, and things are getting worse. The more you escalate, the worse it gets. So now there are rumors of a ground invasion. Israel has been trying for the past few days. Still did not happen, but we don't know at what moment this happens.
And let's give the viewers a little bit of background, because this is something that I often encounter when I'm trying to discuss with people in the United States or even in Europe about the situation in Lebanon. They say, who is fighting whom? Like, who is on the side of Israel and who is fighting against Israel, and why is Lebanon even, wrapped up or involved in all of this? So can you take us back maybe to, I don't know, 1990, or even before 1975, or maybe 1948, whenever we need to go back to understand why Israel is now bombing Beirut? Is there any kind of way that we can summarize it in about 3 minutes?
I say that in a story you can have more than one villain. So Lebanon is not on Israeli side, neither on the Hezbollah side. Both are trying to occupy the country or already occupied it, and both are hurting innocent civilians. If you want a small background on Hezbollah, Hezbollah by definition is a terrorist organization or an Iranian-backed militia. But as we said, it's more than all of that. It's an ideology, and you cannot bomb an ideology. Uh, for the history of Hezbollah, it started with Musa al-Sadr, who was born in Iran, and he came to Lebanon in the 50s when the Shia community in Lebanon was still known for its poverty and marginalization. And he founded a recognized religious organization under government control, because before that, the Shia were not recognized as a confessional group. And the Sunnis had control over the religious matters. So he gave them a bit of power. He founded then what we call today, what was called the movement of the dispossessed. He was advocating for their voices and for Shia rights in general, but he focused a lot on interfaith dialogue, and he was relatively more moderate. However, within the Shia community, there were two distinct political movements. The Shia who agreed with him, and the Shia who preferred something more revolutionary, more transnational, like Hezbollah, and the ideology of Ayatollah Fadlallah at that time. So, and then we had the Israeli invasion of Lebanon 3 years after the Islamic Revolution opened the doors for the cooperation between Tehran and Lebanese Shia. And that's how they formed Hezbollah, and they made it an anti-Israel resistant group. And since then, it's been funding Hezbollah with weapons, money, strategic advice, etc. And over the year, Hezbollah's power in Lebanon has grown, and it's now considered by a vast majority of Lebanese as an Iranian occupation of the country. And what Iran did is that it gave Hezbollah, Shia in Lebanon, an illusion of security and power. But what it did is actually turn them into radicalized mercenaries that are extremely demonized by other communities in Lebanon now. And all that power that they made them feel for all this year just fell apart now with this war, with all the death, with all the commanders dying, with Nasrallah's assassination. So all that illusion just disappeared now, but they still have the same ideology of fighting Israel. So we don't know how we can end that till now.
So one of the things that I always think is an interesting way of describing Hezbollah is as a nation or a state within a state. So you can also, George, you can chime in, or Romy, you can also tell me what you think about that. But I remember being in Lebanon, Beirut, and then driving from Beirut into southern Lebanon and the UNIFIL area, which is the United Nations forces in Lebanon. and UNIFIL is UN forces who are basically there to make sure that the Lebanese Hezbollah and Israel are observing their kind of ceasefire across this southern border of Lebanon. But there's southern Lebanon is a lot different from the Beirut and the areas to the north of Beirut, and it feels different. And just with the many checkpoints, the many kind of the streets with lots of posters of Hezbollah fighters that have been killed, and even just the general kind of atmosphere where it's a little bit more, I would say, northern Lebanon is more liberal. Southern Lebanon, it's the Hezbollah area. It's very kind of people are not out in the street, and it's almost like kind of war, a society that was kind of at war. And this was 2 years ago, and I'm sure that it's even more in a state of war as we speak. But so in reality, Lebanon has this Hezbollah area in the south, and then the rest of Lebanon is more or less a very different story. So as you said, ordinary Lebanese who are not affiliated with Hezbollah generally are very unsupportive of Hezbollah's conflict with Israel. And so what is the general opinion about this kind of conflict that Hezbollah and Israel have been engaged in for the past year of people that are not affiliated with Hezbollah in Lebanon?
Do you want me to go first?
Well, go ahead.
Okay. So you said Hezbollah is a state within a state, but I think it's much more than that. It's a state above the state because it holds so much power. The Lebanese government cannot hold it accountable. And Hezbollah has used this overpower against other Lebanese. I can give some example. Like in 2005, Hezbollah is accused of being behind the assassination of Rafi al-Hariri, former prime minister of Lebanon. And in 2008, we had a Hezbollah invasion of Beirut after the government made the decision to remove Hezbollah's telecommunication networks. And in 2019, when we had our protest, Hezbollah thugs came down to the streets to beat a protester and oppose any reform that we could be done. And in 2020, many Lebanese believe Hezbollah was the one who stored ammonium in the port that caused the explosion. And Hezbollah has blocked any attempt to find who was behind it or hold anyone accountable. And to this day, the vast majority of the country did not want to be dragged into this war, but Hezbollah forced us to go into this war. But the vast majority of Lebanese did not want to be included. We had posters all over the country saying no to war. But obviously, we have limits of what we can do when we have a militia so armed that has killed any opposition against it. So there are limits of what we can do. But a vast majority of the Lebanese do not want this war and do not see a purpose in it.
Yeah, absolutely. So not really within a state, but really kind of above the state. They're able to basically at any time. Yeah.
I can say something. It's not about only the state, because there's really something in the south of Lebanon. There's some historical, if you want, issue with the Hezbollah, because since the 90s, the 82, when Israel made his invasion and stayed for 18 years in the south, so there have been a lack of state presence in the south. And that's why all this generation for 20 years, they have for them, and the south, and most of the Lebanese that are in the south, they know only Hezbollah. They don't know the Lebanese army. So for them, it's they have a role of protection role. And even when in 2000, when Israel withdrew from our country, for them the liberation, it was made by Hezbollah, and again in 2006. So this perception of the Lebanese of south, from the southern of Lebanon, for them, Hezbollah is their army and Hezbollah is their state, since our state that has been absent for the last 40 years from the south. And that's what made this difference between the south and Beirut and the north and other places. So it was created there, and that's why they created their own system, their own schools, their own hospitals, and they have their own teaching system. And when you want to change a country or the mentality of the country, you need one generation of 15 to 20 years. So you give education to these kids, what or everything concern about Hezbollah. That's why you will find thousands of Lebanese Shia, they follow Hezbollah and blinded.
Yeah.
And they don't have this logic that we have, the other that we live together. So when I speak to someone from Hezbollah, he will tell me, I don't understand your logic. We have our logic. So please don't address this matter with me.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree that it seems like there is a kind of very foreign mentality when you see some of these, well, I remember just watching rallies or speeches of Nasrallah, and this mentality of kind of hero making everyone into a martyr, like everyone who had died in these wars against Israel. This is a kind of it's like a mentality of almost permanent war. Would you say that's kind of accurate? Like Hezbollah has this idea of like permanent resistance and permanent war against Israel, whereas the other groups in Lebanon, which are the majority of Lebanon, do not want to have anything like that. It's a completely, separate mentality and ideology from the Hezbollah mentality.
Exactly. And again, because Hezbollah, it was the only group that has consistently and effectively defended the south from the Israeli. So many residents there, they consider that it's their de facto army. So that's what replaced the army. Because our country, because of the government that they don't want to take, if you want, the responsibility to take this and to put on the table the army of Hezbollah are saying, okay, we have to negotiate. There's no more war. Let's do this, because they were afraid of Hezbollah. And like Romy said, they used this power internally to keep this army, because there's Israel around.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then another thing that I want to get to the current situation and the humanitarian situation, but another thing that I did want to add was 1989 in the Taif Agreement. It was the disarmament of all militias in Lebanon, including Christian the Christian militias. What was the main Christian militia?
Lebanese forces.
Yes,
Lebanese
Lebanese forces. Yes, and several other militias that were in this kind of civil war within Lebanon, which is very complex. But most of those militias, all of those militias, did disarm and disband, except for Hezbollah.
Mhm.
Is that correct? And so,
That's
because
correct.
all of the other militias disbanded and gave power back to the Lebanese army, the power of controlling, being the armed forces of the nation, all of the Christian militias, Sunni militias, I'm not certain of the history here, but all of the militias that were not Hezbollah basically gave back power to the Lebanese army, and then Hezbollah did not. And because of that, the situation kind of became what Romy said, where Hezbollah, because of their advantage in this kind of paramilitary power that they have, is able to, resort to tactics that they use, like invading Beirut when there's some political activity that they don't agree with. In the past, this has happened. So, but let's move on a little bit to the situation right now in Beirut. We had a question from one of the community members. Are many missiles hitting Beirut, and how is the Christian community coping? and what are their needs now. So um, I think, yeah, George, could you talk a little bit about this? The destruction that's happening right now in Beirut that you're
Yes,
seeing.
indeed, there's been affected to many areas in Beirut and around Beirut, the sections around Beirut. Like now, I'm in Babda. I'm like 1 kilometer away or 2 kilometer away from Dahi, where's the Hezbollah area, and all around this area, there's a mixing area between Christian and Hezbollah community, the Shia. So mainly all these missile strikes they hit and these targets around Hezbollah districts, and they were sending messages at night, every night, around this area to leave 500 meters away from this area. So, for example, Eli, you know Eli, he works to get with us here. He lives in Hadat. It's really close from the area. So, with his family, they have to leave the area. Some of also of our employee at school, they live around. Their houses were attacked also, and so there's a really big danger around, and we never know where when would be the next strike and
Mhm.
where. Okay,
Yeah.
so the Christian community, we are coping with this mechanism. So and that's with other groups. With other groups, like there's 1,200,000 now that are outside their homes, and many families they left their homes and they're seeking for shelters and or at their relatives or around schools or churches or friends. Like in my house now, we have one small apartment. I put a family of the parents of one of my friends. He lives around the area. He's Shia. He's not Christian, but he lives there. But they doesn't believe in their system. So uh, his parents, his father is like 82, his mother like 65. They left and they live at my house now. So what we need now mainly is some shelter and for safety for families, and
Yeah.
because they don't have homes, we need the basic supplies like food or drinking healthy water, clean water, clothing, blankets. Now it's winter's coming, so uh, even we don't have mattress to sleep on. So that's mainly what we need. Sanitation also, it's really a big problem now. We're having some problems because in each school there have been like thousands. They're putting them in schools with one or two bathrooms to be used only and without waters. So the problem is that the government didn't prepare. They're saying they have a plan, but as usual, they don't have a plan. They will take the money and they will say they made a plan. And now they're running away. They're making some meetings to say, to ask money from the international community to support, but it's too late because
Yeah.
really 1,200,000 left their homes from the south and the Bekaa, and now they are in the middle of Beirut, or they've been in Kisrain and Jbeil, so in Moliba in the mountains and in the north of Lebanon.
Yeah. So there is mass displacement right now in
Exactly.
Lebanon, especially, well, within Beirut, but also everyone who is being uh, displaced from their homes in southern Lebanon is now coming into the north and looking for somewhere where they can just find shelter, basic shelter, and meet their basic needs. And and again, anyone who is watching this podcast, the one of the quickest and most effective ways that you can help um, is to support our project, Friends of Lebanon, and we are able to quickly get funds to George and to his team and his organization in Beirut. And unfortunately, as he was saying, it's as you were saying, George, it's a situation where you cannot really trust or uh, allow or think about anything that the government is saying as you know trustworthy because they say, we will allow for some programs to help people that have been displaced, and actually nothing happens. So everything kind of has to happen at this grassroots level. And
Exactly.
yeah, so that's what we are trying to continue to do. And if anybody um, would like to support, who is watching, we definitely appreciate the support and people in Lebanon um, who are
Listen,
going
Christopher,
through this.
really, I feel we feel a deep sense of shame, having to ask for help for the last years for our community. As Lebanese, we are proud people and who value our resilience. We are a resilient community, but this situation has reached now really a point where we have no other choice but to seek this support. So
Yeah.
the condition of this over of 1 million displaced minimum people required this immediate attention. That's why really we
Yeah.
need now the support, or normally we won't
Well, I
ask for
mean,
it.
honestly, though, I see it as kind of a a duty of people who, Lebanese people actually are not, everyone bears some responsibility for whatever happens in their country, possibly. But I think that a lot of this situation is completely outside of the control of, ordinary, Lebanese, even the nation of Lebanon, the Lebanese community. It's not necessarily anything that Lebanon could have done. Lebanon, in fact, was a model of kind of welcoming refugees from Syria for many years. It was this kind of model nation where, refugees from the Syrian civil war were coming from 2010, 2011, and they were, I think, at one point that the population of the actual de facto population of Lebanon was something like 40% refugees from Syria and 60% Lebanese, not,
And don't forget
citizens, not more.
The Palestinian refugees also. So
Yeah.
we have three countries in one country as refugees. So the
Yeah.
Palestinian and like 1 or 2 million Syrian, and now 1 or 2 million Lebanese that are refugees in their own country.
Yeah.
So, as specific needs, I think what we need, like we said, and emergency supplies now and water and sanitation. But I guess it will be hard for someone to send something from outside. Maybe the best way is to support financially, and we're trying to have the best resources here to supply for now this emergency. Later on, we're gonna have many other problems, but this is emergency now.
Yeah. Agreed. There's in the chat, Chesty Marine. Interesting. Thank you. They say, no shame in asking for assistance. God bless you all, and praying for all involved. Yes. No, thank you. I absolutely agree with that. Um, and Andrea Kirk Asaf says, thanks for hosting
Mhm.
this conversation. This is this is a very thank you for watching, and hello to you and to your husband and your family. That's George's sister-in-law.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I wanted to, I guess we have about 10 more minutes, and I want to ask Romy. Romy, you've been following a little bit the a lot, I guess, the events after this death of Hassan Nasrallah, and I wanted to ask, what do you think? We have this emergency situation right now on the ground in Beirut, possible invasion, ground invasion going into southern Lebanon, which is crazy to even say and think about. But so how, and obviously everyone should follow this and support as much as you can. But how do you think this situation is going to evolve in the next weeks and, well, days, and then weeks and months to years? What is your take on that?
The options are actually endless. It depends on how the actors decide to move on. Does Israel want a ceasefire? Does Israel want to calm down? Does Hezbollah want to escalate? So far, they seem like both of them want to keep on going in this war, which means it's hard to predict what will happen other than complete destruction, more displaced people, more deaths. So I think the only way to change this game is to have some international actor actually come around and make them stop in one way. For now, many Lebanese are asking to implement some UN resolutions to disarm Hezbollah, to have a ceasefire. But in practice, I don't know how it will be possible. So far, I only see the war going on.
Yeah. And there was this interview of the Lebanese foreign minister named Abdallah Abu Habib, and he made a very kind of interesting statement, I thought, and I don't know, if it was very, verified or not, but he said that right before the Nasrallah was assassinated or killed in this bombardment, he said that he had agreed to a ceasefire with Israel. So have either of you heard that or heard anything about that?
I heard the statement, but honestly, I don't know how we can confirm that. Is it just the Lebanese government trying to do some propaganda and make Hezbollah look like it wants peace? If Hezbollah wanted peace, it could have now said something, but so far they keep on throwing rockets, and Israel keeps on with this airstrike. So I don't see how it was an idea or potential plan.
Yeah. And what could be a kind of realistic plan or legitimate path to ending this conflict so that there's not a lot more destruction and loss of innocent civilian lives in Lebanon? Is there anything that people can be advocating for, or other than just uh, praying to Saint Charbel, or is there any kind of other concrete actions that any of us can take?
Praying is very needed, but I think we should also demand to apply the UN Resolution 1701 that prohibits all armed militias from operating in Lebanon. Uh, we have to have some international pressure for that. Another option could be declaring some no war zones in Lebanon to make sure some areas are still safe, because now Israel is bombing all over the country. So I'm not even sure where it's actually safe in Lebanon anymore. There are safer areas, but I don't think any place in Lebanon is completely safe. So we can maybe demand that. And I think both actors, both Iran and Israel, need to be held accountable. We need ideally sanctions, but I don't see that when big states, big countries are still funding Israel and its weapons. But I think one needs to put limits over Israel that continuously is breaking the red lines that the United States put on them.
And what about the Catholic leadership and the Vatican? Have you been following, or have they put anything out, any statement out in the last several days, or what have they been doing to try to help in this situation? Have they been meeting with have they been putting out statements or hosting meetings, or are they just kind of waiting to see what happens?
Pope Francis demanded a ceasefire, but we don't know how much power he can have on that. Like he's been asking for a ceasefire for Gaza for a year now, and nothing changed. In Lebanon, the Maronite Patriarch Cardinal Bshara Boutros Rai is insisting on the UN resolution I mentioned. And the Patriarch had been asking for neutrality for a long time ago before the war started. Now it's a bit too late, so it's just this UN resolution they're focusing on. And same for other Christian parties in Lebanon, like the Lebanese forces. They've been demanding the implementation of this resolution to make sure we can keep Lebanon out of this war.
Yes, I mean, I've followed a lot of Patriarch Rai, what he said for the last several years. He has been pretty consistently calling for the implementation of 1701, UN Resolution 1701, like you said, and neutrality for Lebanon, and yeah, it seems like it hasn't really gotten anywhere, but maybe there's a possibility that maybe is there some possibility that this could happen uh, in a way that was not so predictable or not so realistic like 1 month ago. Now, because of what has happened in the past month with death of Nasrallah, could it possibly become a little bit more realistic that something like ceasefire and even uh, disbanding of Hezbollah could become some type of realistic possibility or not?
I don't know if Hezbollah wants to be pragmatic and realize they have been losing a lot. So far, they did not announce their defeat. They keep on going. So I don't think they realize how much destruction will come to us if they keep on going. Because at the end of the day, they live on martyrdom and death as long as they're fighting for their own cause. So they don't mind continuing even if they die more and more and more.
Yeah. So yes, it's a very um, unfortunate situation. Uh, well, maybe we can end on a kind of a note of hope. Is there any type of hope or light in the darkness, George, that you can give us, or Romy, that you see in this situation? Because it does seem like for the last 4 years, it seems like things seem to only get worse. Do you think that there do you think that the Christian community, for example, in Lebanon, will there be a Christian community in 20 years or 30 years, and how can people support this continued existence of Christians in Lebanon?
Well, I think yes, there's a hope as long as this community, Christian community, is supported, and we can stay in Lebanon, like our parents stayed, and I'm staying. I'm one of the person that I can leave anytime. I can leave anytime, but I believe in Lebanon. I believe in what we did here, what we create here, and I believe that we can continue as a community. I think the first step that Lebanon should do now is to elect a president. That's really important because once this president is elected, his first role should be really to foster national unity. It means it will include this bringing different political groups to the table and discuss this power sharing arrangement and to end this war as soon as possible. Once we apply the 1701, all the sectarian groups will and all the militia and everyone has army will stop this, and they will be equal in. We will be equal in power. It means only under the Lebanese army and under one country is Lebanon, and that's our only hope.
Yeah. So, yes, absolutely. I agree. And one more comment. B. Bella says, heartbroken about the attacks on Lebanon. Haven't the Lebanese people suffered enough throughout history? When does it stop? Where is the UN? God protect Lebanon. So, yes, anybody who would like to know more about our Friends of Lebanon project, we have the website on our Urbi et Orbi Communications website. And there's also a link there in the chat. You can support us and get those funds directly into the hands of people that need them the most, because right now, as George and Jerome said, it is a pretty dire situation. It's an emergency, and we will be trying to continue to support them as much as we can. And Andrea Asaf says, thank you for all you do, George. So
Thank you.
Last, we can finish with some words from Saint Charbel. He said, a man who prays lives out the mystery of existence, and a man who does not pray scarcely exists. So I guess that is what we will all continue to do, and we will all pray for everybody to be safe. And George, I hope you stay safe. Homie, I hope
Thank
you
you.
stay safe as well.
Thank you.
And
And we are so grateful to have such friends like you, Christopher, for Lebanon.
well, I feel grateful as well, and all of us at Urbi Orbi, we all feel very grateful to have gotten the chance to visit and to have worked with you for such a long time. And I hope we can actually just continue to build on what we've done, so that, you know, even in the midst of this absolute, you know, craziness and war, we can persevere and survive and get to the light at the end of the tunnel. So, any more comments? B. Bella, thank you, George and Christopher. John B, pray for peace. Chesty Marine, so much wisdom in these words. God bless all. Okay, so thank you so much, George. Thank you so much, Romy, and be safe, everybody. God bless
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
So,
Bless you
bye.
too.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Come
Bye,
with
Romy.
us on a unique pilgrimage and retreat to renew your spirit. Experience the beauty and richness of southern Spain. Our retreat master, Father Charles T. Murr, a renowned Catholic priest, best-selling author, philosopher, theologian, trained psychologist, and pastor of souls. Father Murr will guide us through 3 mornings of spiritual reflections at a convent located in the historic heart of Carmona, Spain, promising a transformative journey. Experience an intimate evening with Father Murr at his home. Wine, dinner, music, and conversation, a highlight of this unique experience. Explore picturesque towns in Andalusia, each with its own history and charm. From the ancient streets of Carmona to the majestic beauty of Cordoba, the breathtaking views of Ronda, the remarkable village of Centenil, and the historic wonders of Seville. Our pilgrimage will be filled with awe-inspiring moments. Join us on this profound spiritual journey and rediscover the joy of faith, fellowship, and renewal. Book your place now and embark on a pilgrimage and retreat unlike any other.